Hello everyone, welcome to the next video that is on the topic machine learning approaches. So in this we'll study the remaining approaches. So we'll study decision tree, support vector machines, genetic algorithms. So the first one is decision tree. Now what is a decision tree and how it is used in machine learning? So, as the name itself says, a tree which is being able to take some decisions. So, whenever we are creating a tree in machine learning, it is based on the conditions and on the labels which are being assigned for the particular classification problem. So, it is basically an algorithmic approach that identifies different ways to split a data set based on different conditions. So it is one of the most widely used and practical method for supervised learning. Now these trees, as the second point says, are supervised methods which are used for both classification and regression. Now, if we talk about classification, tree, or if we are saying it is a classification tree, so it will always have some discrete set of values where we'll be able to classify things. Like if we are talking about classification problem which has 0 or 1, or we can say we have a problem in which we are classifying a spam mail, that is yes or no. So here we can see we have only discrete values, like it can be yes or it can be no. So these type of problems are known as classification problems, and these trees, whenever we represent these problems in the form of tree, these trees are known as classification trees. Now next we have the regression trees. Now, what are regression trees? So, as the name itself says, the regression trees are basically where the target variable can take continuous values. Like, for example, I want to calculate the salary of a person. Now, it can depend on the base salary plus the leave plus the perk. Now, these all values, when we'll be adding all the values, we'll get a real number, because the salary of a person is always in numbers. So this type of classification, or this type, not classification, this type of calculation is basically called as regression, where there are variables, and on the basis of these variables the target value is calculated. So I hope this is clear what are decision tree and how the decision trees are classified. Next, we have the example on the basis of which you can understand how a data set is converted into a tree. So here we can see the tree can be explained by two entities, decision nodes and leaf. So here we have the decision nodes, like humidity is a decision node, wind is a decision node, this is a root node, and these are leaves. These are the classification labels. Now, the labels which are associated with a node are always having some conditions. Now, how these conditions are being assigned? So here we can see we have outlook, temperature, humidity, and wind. Now, these are the features, and different features are having different values. Now we are given with a problem that we have to identify whether this person is able to play tennis or not. So whenever we are creating decision trees, we use two mathematical formulas, which is entropy and information gain, on the basis of which we get to know which node will become the root node and how the further features will be assigned. So here we can see, if we talk about Sunny, let us assume it is the root node. Here we have drawn the outlook as root node. Now you can see we have different values like sunny, overcast, and rain. So we have assigned the values like sunny, overcast, and rain. Now next comes humidity. We are assuming this that Outlook's left child will be humidity. Now humidity is divided into further values like high and normal, which is assigned as the conditions of the decision node, high and normal. Similarly, we have wind. Wind is having weak and strong. So here we can see we are assigning it as strong and weak. Now, every classification or every root node, leaf node, not root node, is assigned a label. So whenever we are traversing any single path of the tree, we will get a classification that will be yes or no, because the Platanus has only two attributes which are yes and no. So next, if I want to traverse this path, like outlook is rain and wind is strong. So for this problem, I'll get the classification that is no. I hope this is clear how the decision trees are converted into or how the data set is converted into a decision tree. So this is also an interesting approach. In this, we have to calculate different values and then we have to assign the nodes accordingly. So next we have the third one, that is the Bayesian networks. Now, what is a Bayesian network? As the name suggests, it is derived from the Bayes theorem. So in mathematics, we have already studied what is a Bayes theorem. So let us have a quick revision of what is Bayes theorem. So whenever we have the probabilities like P A by B. Now this is denoting the probability of event A, like we are calculating the probability of event A when the event B has happened. Now we can see we have this Bayes concept. So how this Bayes concept is used in machine learning? So whenever we have the events which are sequential, or the previous or the current event is dependent on the previous event, in that case we use Bayesian network. So it is basically a probabilistic graphical model. So we'll study the content written over here. So Bayes network is a probabilistic graphical network model which represents a set of variables and their conditional dependency via a directed acyclic graph. Now, these networks are also known as Bayes networks, belief networks, decision networks, or Bayesian models. Now, these networks are basically probabilistic because there is a probability distribution. We know we have to calculate the current value on the basis of previous value only. In next slide, we'll see how these Bayesian networks are drawn in machine learning. So this is the theoretical things, like it is a directed acyclic graph. It expresses conditional independence and the values or the conditional probability is associated with each node. Like this is an interesting example from which you will get some clarity to what is Bayesian network. Now you can see we have some conditions like alarm is on, the bus is late, overslept, or on time. Now this is the final event for which we have to calculate the probability. Now here we can see this is a cyclic graph, directed acyclic graph. Because why it is directed? Because every node has a specific direction. And why it is acyclic? Because there is no cycle in the graph. Now first we will talk about the first one, that is alarm is on. Now we can say there will be only two conditions. Alarm is on or it is off. So here we have yes and no. So the probabilities for yes and no is given to us. Second, moving on to the second condition, overslept. Now this is dependent on which alarm is on or off. So we will assign the values like alarm, yes and no, and yes, no, because we have the dependency of the overslept on alarm on. So we have two variables here. We will have four possible combinations. Two is like yes and no, then yes, no, and no, yes. So this is the probability, or this, we can say this is how the conditional probability is assigned. Next, we have the bus late. So here we have two things, yes or no, because it is not dependent on any other event. Now, last we have the on time. Now we can see on time. Here we have the two events which are already occurred, like bus is late and overslept. Now these two will be responsible for calculating the probability of on time. So we will write bus and over, because bus is also having yes and no. So these are two variables. Again, we will have four possible combinations. But on time is also having some responses, so it will be yes or no. So here we'll write yes or no. So now you can see these are the conditional probabilities, because on time is dependent on the previous two events. So this is how the Bayesian networks are explained and how these are used in machine learning. In the further unit, we'll solve the numerical also, but for this unit, we just need to have an introduction to what is Bayesian network. So moving on to the next one, that is a support vector machine. So what is a support vector machine? It is a supervised machine learning problem or method which is used for classification algorithms for two-group classification. So in this, we have different labels which are assigned some target value, and the new target points are placed into the category on, or we can say, in which the new label can lie. So in this, we have the label training data, and we categorize the new text or new data point. Now, how the support vector actually works? It basically draws an hyperplane in an n-dimensional space that can separate the data points in different classes. So the main goal of support vector machine is to classify or to separate the data points by drawing an hyperplane. Now, how this hyperplane actually is drawn, we'll study in the next slide. But the major objective of a support vector machine is the distance between the closest points of different classes should be maximum. When the distance will be maximum, the classification will be more accurate or proper. Because if two clusters have intermixed data point, it is very difficult for the support vector to classify or segregate them. But if the points are separately, or we can say there is a large distance between the point, it is very easy for the support vector to classify it. Now, on the basis of the problems, we can define or categorize the support vectors. So first is the simple SVM, and second is the kernel SVM. Now, what is simple SVM? Whenever we are using the SVMs for linear regression or classification problem, matlab, it says whenever the simple machines are having two classes only, then we have the linear regression. Like we have some variable. Let me tell you with an example. We have an equation like y is equals to mx plus c. Now here we can say we have y which is dependent on x. So here we only have two variables, or we are calculating it for a linear regression line. So it is simple SVM. But whenever we have non-linear data, we need to have non-linear equations, or we can say the data is in high dimension. So in that case, kernels are used to, we can say the kernels are used to convert the non-linear data into the linear data. So this is how the SVMs are categorized on the basis of linearity and non-linearity. Next, this is the diagrammatic representation, how the SVM work. So here we can see we have two classes. First one is this green one and second one is the blue one. So here is a line that is aggregating both the clusters or data points. Now this is the positive hyperplane because the direction, or we are talking about the upward direction. But whenever we are talking about the negative, this will be considered as the hyper or negative hyperplane. Now the second one is the maximum margin. The maximum margin is like, we can see, let me clear this out. We can see we have distance between the both points of different clusters. So this is how the proper classification is done. So the maximum, the distance between the both data points should be maximum. Next, we have the support vectors. So the first data point, which is able to distinguish both the clusters or the groups, is known as the support vector, because with the help of that point only we are able to classify it, or we are able to draw a line which is doing the proper classification. Next, we have the last one, that is genetic algorithm. Now, what are genetic algorithm? Genetic algorithm is a search heuristic that is inspired by Charles Darwin theory of natural evolution. So the genetic algorithm basically reflects the process of natural selection, where the fittest individuals are selected for reproduction for the next generation. So the genetic algorithms are used as a searching technique in which the fittest individuals or the fittest chromosomes are propagated for the next generation, or to produce the offsprings. Now, this is a search algorithm which is used for searching and optimization problems. And the genetic algorithms basically comes under evolutionary algorithm. The genetic algorithm employs the concepts of genetics and natural selection to provide solutions of problem. So wherever we have some problem and we need to modify it, we need to optimize it, then in that case we use genetic algorithms. Now, these are some of the concepts which are used in genetic algorithm. So we have A1, A2, A3, A4. This purple box denotes the population. This is the population for which we are creating the next generation or the offsprings. Now, every individual is denoted by the binary values like 0, 1, a combination of 0, 1. So the individual bit is known as a gene. So every algorithm which uses A1, A2, or we can say we uses chromosomes, is converted into binary format. Next, the collection of genes is known as a chromosome, and the different operations are applied on the chromosomes to produce new offsprings. Like we can say in this population, we have chosen two chromosomes. Like these, we have assumed A1 and A2 to be the fittest one. So A1 and A2, we can see we are interchanging the bits to produce the new offspring. Now we have two new offsprings, A5 and A6. Now A5 is like 000 of A1 is converted into 111 So this is A5, and A6 will be now the A1, that is 000. Bits of A1 are substituted to A2. That is 000 111. So this is the new offspring which are generated from this chromosome or population. So like this, whenever we are optimizing or we need to generate new patterns, we use genetic algorithm in machine learning. So for the algorithm, we need to consider the following phases. First is the initial population. As I've already told you, we need to select the individuals from the population. Second is the fitness function, which helps us to pick which chromosome will be the best one for creating new offsprings. Next one is the selection. Now, what is selection? Whenever we are given with a population, we need to pick some chromosomes. So the picking of chromosomes is known as selection process. Now, crossover, what is crossover? The previous slide will move to the previous slide. This is crossover. We are crossing the bits of one chromosome to the other one to generate new offsprings. So this process is known as the crossover. Next, we have the mutation. Now, what is mutation? Let us say we have some values like 1010. If I want to mutate it, so after mutation, the 1 will be converted into 0 and the 0 will be converted into 1. So the result for this will be 0, 1, 0, 1. So this is how the mutation is done in the genetic algorithm. So for understanding genetic algorithm, these 5 points are the main phases which we have to study. So this is introduction to machine learning approaches, but in the further videos, we'll study these topics one by one in we can say we will study the mathematical part also, and we'll study these in detail. So this is all for the topic machine learning approaches. Thank you.